welcome to Chief Chat. With me we have Chief Lee Gavin and Chief David Brogan, and we are going to talk about things that are happening around our city, and as well talk about how to keep ourselves safe within our city and beyond. So welcome, gentlemen, to Chief Chat.
How you doing today?
Good, thank you. There's a lot of things happening, and we have a star among us.
Of course, yes.
Channel 7, ABC will never be the same. But you were recently on Channel 7 talking about fire safety and what to do and what not to do. And one thing that struck me was, and I guess this is an emotional issue, when you have a fire, you want to make sure your family's out, and you want to go in and try to find them and bring them to safety, but that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's right. And so it was a really good opportunity to get that message out to a lot of people with Channel 7. To try to demonstrate what it sounds like. We hear the same messages over and over, smoke detectors and all those things, and it's a simple message, but it's so important, the smoke detectors. I just can't stress that enough. But yeah, once you get out of a house,
Sure.
part of your exit plan needs to be a meeting place. So everyone gets out and you go to the meeting place. And sometimes what happens is they go out and someone has gone back in to look for them, or they've gone to the neighbors to call for help, or maybe they got out and went in the backyard, and so someone else will get out and that everyone's not accounted for, and they try to go back in. And people have been killed going back in to save someone who's actually out of the building somewhere else.
And that really puts more of a burden on the fire department too, because rather than going in and saving people that couldn't get out, you're going in and saving people that got out
Right.
and went back in again.
Or if they are in there, now we have two people to save
Right.
instead of
Right.
So it can add to the problem, and a fire grows so fast and it gets
Sure.
so disorienting, the smoke. So once you get yourself out, once the fire has got to a certain point, there's no safely going back in there. You need to be sure the fire department's on the way. If you can go outside the buildings, if you know where they're at, hopefully if it's your child that you're going after, you've practiced all these drills with them, and they know if they can't get out through the normal means, then to come to the window and come out the window. And so you should have practiced all these things. In an ideal world, that's what you've done.
Probably,
But if
yeah.
you try to go back in through your front door, where you're never going to make it through the fire area to get to someone without the special gear that we have.
And also the disorientation that you actually experience, because this is your home. I mean, you're supposed to be able to go through it blindly and know where everything is, but because of the smoke, you become very disoriented.
Yeah,
And so
it's hard to describe that. It's when you actually find yourself in that scenario, because it's going to drive you to the floor. You'll be down on the ground, and it's so easy to get turned around, but you don't know if you're crawling towards the front door, towards the back door. You could be in a bathroom and stuck in the bathroom for thinking that you're going down a hallway and making another turn, and you never really left this small little area. It's so disorienting. It's hard to describe unless you've actually been in that scenario. And another thing, sometimes people wonder, well, how can someone have left their kids in there? Why did a parent leave their kids in there? If you can't breathe and you're just going to certain death, you just can't do that. And
Right.
and the only way to save your kids is to get yourself out. And so you might bail out a window and then try to find another way to get to your kids. It's so hard to. When you're sitting in a nice, easy, comfortable environment, it's easy to second guess something like that, just because there's no describing what when you wake up and find yourself in that
And
situation.
emotionally speaking, I mean, the first thing you think about is my kids. Where
Right.
are they? And
Right.
but you have to think logically, and that's not the case.
Yeah,
so.
that's why a plan is so important. On the west side of the state, a deputy fire chief, he and his wife got out. They realized the dog wasn't out, and he went back in and he died in the fire. And so, I mean, it could happen to anybody. You think that it's so difficult. Once you get all the people out, just have everyone together, and when the firemen get there and they say everyone's out, that makes our job so much easier. If they get there and they say, I don't know where someone's at, then we take incredible risks.
Right.
Where if it's just a structure, just a building, we'll take some risk, but we're not gonna get a fireman killed over saving property. Firemen will take incredible risks to try to save a
Human
life.
life.
Yeah. So get everyone out, and that's just the message we can't stress enough. Get yourself out. Have a plan, practice that plan, and smoke detectors are so important, because Fires will start off small, and you have a limited window of opportunity to escape that fire. And the smoke detectors are the key in letting you know that there is a fire and to get out.
I think it's almost the same concept as if you were on an airplane, because they tell you, and I tell my kids this all the time, if you want to help someone, you first have to be strong. And so they tell you, put the mask on yourself first, because if you're trying to help everyone else, and you can't breathe, you're going to be useless.
Analogy.
So basically it would be the same kind of thing.
We use that in the police work. We say you got to get to the location safely in order to help the people out. If we're going too fast and we get in an accident, we're not going to do the residents any good that called us. So, like you said, you got to take care of yourself and get to the location safely first.
Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. Chief, there's been a lot of things that have been happening within our city and in the borders of our city as well. I know there's an issue in Inkster that happened, and I know that that's not in our city, but there were 2 individuals that were shot, and right now the preliminary findings look like that they're related, and it has to do with buying something online, Craigslist. Putting your life in danger to buy an object or an item, and this isn't the first time this has happened. I think there's a history of this kind of thing where people go and they meet someone, if it's a car or what have you, and they know they have cash with them or they know they have money, and it's sort of a setup. So how do we protect ourselves from doing that? I know a lot of people do online shopping. I haven't gotten to that yet. I'm always afraid to do it, and I don't. My daughter thinks I'm archaic, but I'm afraid to put my credit card in there, and I'm afraid to do anything online. But how do we protect ourselves from that? I mean, it's getting to be an issue physically and emotionally, basically.
And like you say, you're trying to save a few dollars by buying something on Craigslist. What you have to do is you have to make sure when you're meeting someone, you meet in a well-lit area. In a parking lot, a gas station, a Home Depot,
where there's
a
a lot
Target,
of people.
where there's a lot of people, well-lit area, and cameras. Most of the businesses have cameras. And if you're going to go, make sure you take a passenger, a friend. Don't go alone. Then at least there's a witness there. It's harder to take down one person. It's harder to take down a group of people than one person. So take a few people with you. What we're going to do in the city is there's a few agencies that have set up, it's called like a safe zone, where in a parking lot of the police station or a city hall, a couple parking spots, and they'll be marked, for Craigslist. And we'd like to start something that in Dearborn Heights. Only problem is we got to get a new camera system up and running. So the cameras would aim at those parking spots at all time. So if there was ever an issue, then at least everything would be on camera. License plates, descriptions of offenders, whatever.
Oh.
So there's some cities that are doing that now. So if you're going to meet someone to purchase something, a deal on Craigslist, make sure you go to a well-lit area and look and research. Maybe there's a local police department or a city hall, an open business. But, most police departments have cameras throughout the lot and the building, so that wouldn't be a bad place to go to. Every city has their basically own police department or a fire department, and pull into the lot there and try to do the transaction there.
So basically, it would be maybe 2 allotted locations, physically speaking, where there are actual cameras there, so people will know that if they have any kind of transaction, that's where they go to meet. What about if it's at night, and the perpetrators know that there's a camera or what have you? I mean, how do you sort of finagle that or create
still
the
at
safety
night,
zone?
the parking lots, in city buildings are well lit. So, the camera would still be able to pick up. Sure, it's not going to be as good as daylight, but it would still pick up license plates, vehicle descriptions. If something did go wrong with the transaction, at least we got something to go off of. Right now, on some of these Inkster incidences, individual has been shot and killed. There's no witnesses. Nobody saw what kind of car was involved, nothing.
They were both shot in their cars, right?
Sounds like in their cars, yep.
Yeah.
So, try to go to a well-lit area, and to save a few dollars and make a Craigslist purchase, sometimes it's not worth your life.
Yeah, and it's probably a good idea to actually tell the person that you're going to meet that we're going to a designated area with cameras as well. So that if they shy out of the deal, that there was something messed up
Almost
to
every
begin with.
corner, major corner, has a gas station. Most gas stations are well lit. Most of them have cameras, a video system on the ground. So, I mean, go to a gas station where there's people around,
Sure.
and that's the best bet.
We have our new, well, not our new system, but something that's been operating for a little bit called, and speaking about safety, Ping 4 alerts. So we get the cell phone alerts now, telling residents about, various issues. Is the fire department connected into this?
Yeah, we are. I think all the department heads can send out a Ping 4 alerts. Certainly Chief Gavin and I can. I know that Emergency Director Bob Ancrab, he can as well. It's a free app. It's a great thing to have. And what we use it for, you're not going to get a lot of junk notifications. It's going to be when something's happening. We're coming up to the storm season where we get a lot of down power lines, a lot of issues along that, flooding, that kind of thing. And for instance, the flooding, they could put out a message about. I know last time when we had the really bad floods, we were trying to contact the media to get some messages out. I know. The mayor and Chief Gavin and I each spoke with different media outlets trying to get the word out. Where now we'll be able to use Ping 4 to let them know we had a temporary housing set up. We had places where they could get some food and water. We were working with the American Red Cross and had cots and everything else in case people were out of their homes. But our citizens didn't know about a lot of the steps that we had taken. So this is it's a great free app. You go to your app store on your phone, whether it's iPhone or Android device, and search Ping 4 alerts.
PNG 4 alerts.
Yeah,
okay.
PING, and then the number 4 and alerts. And then you set it up, like mine is
It's
set up.
PING. I always thought it was PNG.
No.
No wonder I couldn't find it.
Yeah, and it's just it's a free app. You can set it up by location too. So I have it set up for Dearborn Heights and my location. So if you're traveling out of town and that community also has Ping 4 alerts, you can get notification of things going on wherever you're at.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that's it. If we have a intersection closed or some streets closed due to, if it's flooding, if it's an accident, wires down, we can put it out on the Ping 4 alerts, and then it goes out to our residents. Like the chief said, with the upcoming storm season, you get your tornado warnings, tornado watches all through that. So that works good.
Do you think we'll see anything like we saw the other year with
Let's
the?
hope not. Yeah.
Oh, that was
A lot of rain.
That was
Yep.
quite
Yeah.
challenging.
It certainly was.
I was going to backtrack a little bit. We were talking about smoke detectors. Also important thing are carbon monoxide detectors. I know the fire department
Absolutely.
goes out on those. I had a personal experience years ago up north where, we were in our cottage up north, and the carbon monoxide detector went out, and my dad was very sick, but he got better. But it just, the homes are shut tight for the winter,
Sure.
and if you're using some kerosene heaters or propane heaters or anything in the house, very good chance of getting carbon monoxide. So it's very important, like the smoke detector, make sure you got the carbon monoxide detector. And I think the fire department goes out on those now and then, right,
Yeah,
Chief?
yeah, we do. We've had, in our city, we've had several really close calls with carbon monoxide. And a lot of times it's when furnaces just fire up, or if you've had work, sometimes it's been furnaces have been replaced, a brand new furnace, and they don't hook up the exhaust quite right, and now it's
so the
exhausting
leakage.
into the home. Yeah, we've had those. Those are things that actually happen in our city, and I don't know if you heard in the where they just had the really bad snowstorms. A man and his wife and a young kid went to their car, and the wife and the child got in the car and they warmed it up while he was out digging the car out. Well, the snow had built up over the exhaust, and while he's
so
digging the
went
car
back
out,
in to the
he
car.
came in and they had succumbed to carbon monoxide, and so they both actually died. And it was just such
a matter of
simple.
digging-
Well, yeah, it was. It took
So
some
how
time.
many minutes? How
Well, it
long
depends
was
on the
that?
level of carbon monoxide. There are different levels. We also had a case here in Dearborn Heights where the furnace was installed incorrectly, and we had a call for a person that was having a diabetic reaction, and they
Okay.
went there because they had diabetes and they've been having a hard time managing it. And this has been like the third or fourth time that week that they had called us. And they walked in and they smelled kind of funny, and they had just got back from a local hospital, and they started talking, and other people in the house were feeling the same kind of symptoms. So they got everyone out of the house, and they went in and checked, and it was a carbon monoxide leak. And that's why the patient would feel really bad. They'd go to the hospital, they'd feel better. And then they were released, they'd come back home, they started to feel bad again, and they went back in, and they were blaming it on their current medical condition, but everyone in the house was sick. Someone ended up in the hyperbaric chamber downtown over that one because the levels are so high. But in that level, it was just low enough where they could tolerate it with just these long-term symptoms, where if it gets higher and higher and higher, it could be fatal in a short amount of time, like we saw in the I think it was New York where they died in that car.
You get a headache, and then it proceeds from there. So
yeah, what are the symptoms? I mean, because you're saying that you can have carbon monoxide leakage into the house without really passing out or having, but it can make you very sick. So
you get a headache and red flushed skin a lot of times, but you get confused. That's another problem with it. People can wake up and not really know what's going on, and so then they can't adequately get themselves out of the house. And that was another case we had in Dearborn Heights. There was a family of 5, and in the springtime or in the summertime, they had covered up their chimney. And in the fall, when the furnace kicked back on, one person happened to stagger out of the house and was acting confused, and a bypasser saw them and started talking to them. And then they went in and found the rest of the people in the house, and I mean, they all almost died in there if that person hadn't just stumbled outside. And
over the years, we've had a few suicides that way, where people will go into their car in the garage and just run the car, put the windows down. It's all airtight, and eventually carbon monoxide. I had a gentleman years ago when I was on the road that he put a lawnmower in his bedroom, and he ran a hose from the exhaust of the lawnmower to like a mask, and he just inhaled, breathed that, and he committed suicide that way. So, I mean, carbon monoxide is very dangerous. You know, not that many suicides, but in regards to our homes and that, it's important to have that carbon monoxide detector just as well as a smoke detector. I think they sell them where they can be a combination of both, one device with both smoke and
very,
carbon monoxide.
very, very smart to do. And you know, it's not that unusual. I know in a lot of movies, they show someone getting into the car, into the garage where you know they turn on the car, and it's you know it's a planned suicide kind of thing. And speaking of that, I mean, we're in our winter months, and a lot of people get really depressed. And, I mean, the winter blues are real and alive, especially, unfortunately, here in our hometown of Michigan. What kind of issues do you see in the wintertime, more so in regards to, you know, mental health of our residents, you know, looking at the summertime, because summertime, the sun is out, you're happy, you know, you want to smile, but winter is a difficult time for a lot of people, and in the holidays too, you know, once they've passed. So what are we seeing in terms of our residents and the challenges they're having with that kind of thing?
You know, like you're saying, in the summer the windows are open, the sun's shining, fresh air. In the winter, the windows are shut, closed. You're not getting out, our elderly, right? Not getting out. You've got all your bills coming in from Christmas still. So you see a lot of depression this time of the year. You know, we respond to a lot of suicidal people. They will call sometimes those 800 numbers to get help, and then we'll get a call from that mental health employee that, you know, so-and-so at this location is talking irrational or wants to end their life, and we'll respond out there and do the best we can, try to get them out of the house if there's an issue with that, and get them some medical treatment. But you're seeing more of it. Economy's still a little rough. A lot of people financially, they're struggling. Health issues, people struggle. And it all just, you know, it's a big burden on them. And then they have no escape. They might have no family, no friends to discuss with. And they just sit around the house all day, and then you get a lot more suicides. So we've seen an increase in suicides, you know, a lot of different methods. Still, the biggest is probably your drug overdose. When people want to end their life, they'll go and, you know, do the drugs and create an overdose.
And that seems to be really prevalent too, and to me a lot easier to attain than it was in the past. I don't know, you know, it's just, it seems like it's more prevalent, and it's not as big of a deal, especially in regards to the marijuana conversation. And I was at a round table yesterday discussing it with some legal officials, and, you know, their approach as well is, you know, the medical marijuana seems to make it more attainable, and,
Yep.
and to some people it actually makes sense, and it is proven effective in some medical conditions,
So as
but
it's
more
controlled.
for the seniors.
Right.
But the average person who has a medical card is like 24 years old. So there's definitely a
We
disconnect
don't see many
with that.
of our elderly seniors with the medical marijuana. They don't even
Right.
know what half that stuff is.
So our
right.
excuse is it helps our seniors, but the 24-year-olds are the average age who has that. So and that's an open door kind of drug to other things as well.
Right.
So have you seen that more prevalent? Where they start with the medical marijuana and then it sort of escalates to different drugs.
Yeah, and it's not even medical marijuana. It could be people are very concerned about drugs, especially they're worried about their kids going through high school and college years.
Sure, it's devastating.
Yeah, but the medication you have in your own house, that's a very common place for people to start on the path to drug addiction. And where before...
I mean, are we talking Tylenol, Aleve, or are we talking prescription?
No, prescription drugs. A lot of times, Vicodin, that's one of the big ones. And people will have it, and so it doesn't seem like that bad of a step to take. That's such an easy step to take, just one Vicodin. And people are already taking it where it's legal and is prescribed, and so it doesn't seem like it's that bad of a step. That's why this is such an easy path for kids to get on. We see, and then the prevalence of heroin. But that's where a lot of this will lead to. So you start with the Vicodin, and then pretty soon one doesn't do it, and you start taking two, and we get kids that are taking 14 a day. Sometimes they're crunching it up and snorting it, and then that gets very expensive. And heroin is cheaper, and you could also snort heroin before where you would have to shoot it up. And so
there's a snort heroin now too?
Yes, and the way that they go down this path is so easy for a good kid, a good family, for someone to wind up on that path. And so you have to just be so mindful of prescription drugs and prescription pills. Alcohol used to be such a big thing, and it still is. It's still an issue. But with kids nowadays, they can take pills where you don't have the smell, they can hide it from their parents a little bit better. And sometimes they have the pills that were prescribed legally that now they're starting to abuse. And so you just have to be so careful about what's in your own medicine cabinet and what pills have been prescribed. Make sure that no one's, that is such a scary path, for parents or for anyone. If you find, a lot of young people that start off taking pills, you see a lot of football players professional football players who found themselves addicted to
Well,
pain.
they start on
pain medication.
steroids too, and that
stepping stone.
mixes
It
your
messes psychologically affects you.
Absolutely, and the athletes who were on steroids became very violent in certain situations, and some of our wrestlers actually, cardiac arrest. So the kids don't really know what the issues are and how dangerous it is and what the accountability factor is when you get into this kind of thing.
They're all young and think they're invincible. And
Absolutely.
You know
what are the actual signs that parents have to look for? Because you just said, if they're taking these prescription drugs,
Right.
there's no smell, you don't really, see. And a lot of kids sort of just go into their rooms,
Right.
but how do you...
A lot of times you'll see them change, like a different group of friends. You'll see a change in their grades. All of a sudden they don't want to participate in sports they used to participate in, or just any kind of change in behavior. That requires a lot. And I have teenagers at home, and so as soon as they start to, what do you mean you want to quit the band? And have all these conversations, and part of parents' job is to drive the kids crazy. I think somewhat. It certainly is the kids' job to drive the parents crazy. So
And
I guess
think
that's
we both
fair.
do a great job.
They do. But just be active and aware of what's going on in your kids' lives, and especially a new group of friends with a change in behavior, and all of a sudden they become more withdrawn. Or a lot of times afterwards you could look and see, I think that this is where the problem started, but you just have to be mindful of it and be watching for it right away.
And it's hard to distinguish between, the growing pains and the teenager kind of, I just want to be alone and be in my
so
room.
moody anyways.
Right,
Yep.
to are they...
But that's what you look
manipulating
for, some
substances.
emotional changes in the individual. Their grades, if they start deteriorating, their sleep pattern, if they're not sleeping at night, they're staying out late with their friends. So anything like that.
So what do you do if you do see that and you find that your child is in that kind of situation? What are the steps that you can take? Who can you call? I mean, obviously, parents need help and it's challenging. What would you do?
I would suggest there's a lot of hotlines out there, and they need some type of help. So you call one of those hotlines, they'll refer you to, most of your hospitals all have drug counselors and rehab, and that's what they need. They need someone to sit down and talk to and find out why are they taking these drugs? What's going on
And a lot of
emotionally?
it is peer pressure too,
Right.
and
So
the friends that they keep.
Yeah, the more is their friends are a huge influence, but to talk to them right away, and something else you could just keep in mind is they have drug tests now at any pharmacy. You can go and buy a drug test for $25, $35. So if you have suspicions and they're really not cooperating, they're very, very accurate drug tests that you can buy go up to CVS and buy a $25, or just with the kid knowing that you know that might be enough to get them to talk to you and tell you the truth. And just having good conversations and good open lines of communication, that's huge to have with your teenage kids.
Good dialogue between the parents and the kids, very important to know what's going on in their life.
Can we threaten them for arrest?
No.
I'm calling the chief.
But you know, when we were talking about the drugs here, heroin nowadays is still, we maybe discussed it in some prior programs, but it's still very prevalent out there.
Absolutely.
The heroin now that's coming in from Mexico and that is even cut with fentanyl. Fentanyl enhances the strength of the drug, and when people are taking their drugs, they don't know they're taking too much, this and that, the fentanyl, and it's killing them. You know, the fire department has seen an increase. We've seen an increase on drug overdoses, not just here in Dearborn Heights, but all our communities, the Birminghams, the Grosse Points, everywhere.
Sure.
And young people, older people, and it's getting scary out there.
It's not worth it.
Not worth it.
It's not
Not at
worth it at all. And you're taking these drugs that are not, you're putting it into your system, and
You don't know what it is.
you don't know what it is, and you're putting your life at risk, and it'll be too late by the time you
When
figure
we
it out.
respond now to a drug overdose, the state police, the FBI, they want us to confiscate the phones and that. They're going after these dope sales.
Right.
They're trying to curb it, and you can be sentenced up to 20 years if you intentionally sold drugs to a person that killed them.
Absolutely.
So,
Well,
it's out there.
we've got to keep talking to our kids, making sure they're on the right track, and and battling, you know, this
right.
drug issue that we've had for many years. But hopefully, we're on the right track. Thank you so much,
Oh, you're welcome.
Chief
Thank
Brogan,
you.
our star, and
Thank
Chief
you.
Gavin, and thank you for joining us on Chief Chat. We'll see you next time.